What's up, y'all? Welcome back to the channel. There's been a lot of talk lately about whether or not the housing market is headed for some kind of crash. And so let's take a look at some of the numbers and some of the facts about the housing market so we can see where the housing market has been and where it might be going in the next coming months. As always, if you're thinking about moving to Atlanta or you just want to know what it's like to live here, feel free to call, text me, email me anytime. Thank you so much to everyone who has reached out. I'm more than happy to help. Starting off, let's talk about interest rates. Interest rates a year ago were at an all-time low. Some people were getting interest rates as low as 2.5%, 2.25%, and that really is unreasonably low. It really is not good for the housing market in general to have such low interest rates. You're really talking about free money. You're talking about people borrowing money with almost no interest rates. And that kind of borrowing, you could argue, is not really healthy for any economy, including the housing market. However, as many people know, the interest rates today have risen drastically. The Federal Reserve has been trying to tame some of the inflation that we're experiencing here in the United States. And as a result of that, raising the prime interest rate has raised many of the mortgage interest rates across the country. As of the filming of this video, interest rates are just reaching 7 and in some cases a little bit over 7%. Now, by the time you see this video, it may be a lot higher because interest rates are going up very quickly. So if you're considering purchasing a home anytime in the near future, next 2 to 3 months, the sooner you lock your interest rate with your lender, the better. And that interest rate, it may be a small difference in the interest rate, but over a 30-year mortgage, that's a big difference for the life of the loan. Should we be concerned about interest rates at 7% or even 8%? I don't think we should necessarily be concerned over the long run. It is unfortunate that we're not seeing those interest rates at 2 and 3% anymore, but over the long run, it's not unprecedented to see interest rates as high as 7 or 8%. Just as recently as the early 2000s, interest rates were at about 7%. And even in the 70s and 80s and early 90s, interest rates were as high as 10 to 15%. So a 7% or even an 8% interest rate is not something that is like brand new to the housing market. We certainly have experienced those kinds of interest rates before, and it's something that we'll have to get accustomed to. Of course, interest rates will always go up and down and fluctuate, and the timing of the market is certainly a big help when you're trying to buy a home and you're locking a loan and getting that interest rate. But overall, I think a 7% interest rate is certainly manageable and is not something that's going to crash the housing market. Let's move on to days on market. Days on market is the number that we use to kind of determine how much demand there is in the housing market. The days on market is the amount of time that a home sits on the market before it goes under contract or before a seller agrees to go under contract with a buyer. Last year, when the housing market was absolutely insane, a crazy circus, the average days on market was like 2 days or 3 days. I think a lot of us had friends or neighbors who would put their home on the market and would go under contract in a matter of hours sometimes. And that, you could argue, is not really healthy for the housing market. You know, you got to ask yourself, like, what does it mean for a seller to put their house on the market and accept an offer in less than 24 hours? I'm not sure that that's really the healthiest thing. So I think what we're experiencing now is a return to normal, and certainly days on market are getting longer. There is less demand in the housing market today because of the increase in interest rates. And that's certainly something to consider if you're planning on selling a home anytime soon. In the spring of this year, the average days that a house would be on the market before going under contract was about 5 days. In August, that number went up to 10 days. And in September, the average days on market was 14 days. So we're certainly seeing a big increase in the average days on market. Again, because of the increase in interest rates and there being less buyers in the market today than there was last month or even last year, there's going to be less demand and homes will naturally sit on the market for a little bit longer until accepting an offer. Another number that we can use to determine the amount of demand in the housing market is the amount that a home is sold for compared to the amount that it's listed for. So for example, last year in 2021, here in Metro Atlanta, a home would be listed for example, 500,000 and would be going under contract at 600,000. There would be 20 offers or 25 offers for each listing, and very often the offer that was accepted was 100,000 over the list price. Again, that does not seem reasonable. It does not seem like you could continue that over the long term. So let's take a look at what that number is today. In the spring of this year, the average sold price was 102% over the list price. So if the home was listed at 100,000, the sales price would have been 102,000. Or to put that into context, if the home was listed at 500,000, the average sold price was 510,000. So still a little bit above the list price. However, just last month, the average sold price was 99% of the list price. So many people are wanting to know, are home values going down? Are they going down drastically? And yes, you could argue some homes are losing their value, but the average is that the sold price is 99% of the list price. So if you listed a home at 500,000 in Metro Atlanta last month, the average sold price was at about 495, which brings us to the more big picture average home value in Metro Atlanta. In the spring of this year, the average home value was about 430 to 440 in all of Metro Atlanta. In September of this year, the average home value has gone down to 415,000. So certainly a bit of a drop compared to its peak at this year. But if we look at that number over a period of 5 years or even 10 years, 415 is still well higher than the average over 5 years. A couple more interesting numbers to think about when you're looking at the housing market in Metro Atlanta. In April of this year, there were 3,900 homes sold. This year, in the month of May, there were 4,381 homes sold. Compare that to September of this year, where there were 3,298 homes sold. So we're definitely seeing a decrease in the amount of homes that are being sold, but that is kind of common for the fall season and for the winter season. Naturally, we have always seen less homes sold during the fall and during the winter. And then a big number for the housing market is the amount of homes that are listed each month. I think for years we have been saying, there's not enough homes for sale, there's not enough listings for the amount of people who are wanting to buy, and there's always seemed like there's a shortage of amount of homes for sale. So let's take a look at how we're doing this year when it comes to the amount of homes listed for sale. There were 5,570 homes listed in the month of May this year. Compare that to September of this year, where there were 5,021 homes listed in all of Metro Atlanta. So again, a few less homes listed each month, but that is kind of common for the fall and the winter. So I think in general, what we're seeing is that the housing market is certainly slowing down a lot compared to last year, but is kind of becoming more normal, more like what the housing market looked like in 2017 or 2018. And when it comes to interest rates, we're seeing interest rates that looked more like the beginning of the 2000s. So again, this is not really an unprecedented time for the housing market. We've certainly seen these numbers before. And if you're wanting to know more about the housing market in general, be sure to subscribe to the channel so you can get monthly updates about the housing market in Metro Atlanta. Thank you so much to everyone who has reached out. I'm more than happy to help.